They say every prison has that one cell, you know? The kind that feels like it doesn't belong, with a door that never quite matches up with the blueprints, a number that seems to have been forgotten over time. In Graydon Penitentiary, that infamous cell was 6. It was tucked away in the oldest block of the prison, where the stone felt like it was sweating in the winter chill, and the pipes rattled at night like they were whispering secrets. The walls carried echoes almost like old wounds that had never healed. Guards would swear that the air felt heavier there, and the light never lasted more than a few seconds before it dimmed again, like it was afraid to linger too long. And in that eerie cell, they kept a man who had no name, no record, nothing at all. Just a body in chains and a silence so deep it scraped the nerves raw. This wasn't just any silence. It was a silence that made the guards forget their own voices, leaving them feeling uneasy, as if they were intruding on something sacred or forbidden. He had been there longer than anyone could remember, older than the warden, older than the paperwork that documented the prison's history. It was as if the prison had been built around him instead of the other way around. Newer guards often dismissed the tales as mere myths, thinking the old-timers were just pulling their legs. But then they'd get the assignment to walk the block at night, and they'd peer through the narrow slit of rusted bars. They'd catch a glimpse of that shape sitting perfectly still on the cot, back straight, head tilted just slightly, eyes fixed on the dark like he was waiting for something or someone. The moment they blinked, they could swear he was suddenly closer to the bars, even though no chains rattled and no movement was made. It was a shift that left them feeling unsettled, like they were part of a story that was still being written. The older guards had their stories, not to comfort, but to warn. Like the time in the 70s when an officer named Reeves tried to pull the Man S file, he opened the drawer only to find it empty. But what really got to him was the sight of his own handwriting scrawled across the papers, words he couldn't recall writing, words that weren't even in English. Symbols that looked like claws dragging across parchment. 2 weeks later, Reeves was found in the boiler room, his throat open, not cut, but torn, as if something had ripped it from the inside. The walls around him were blackened with soot, spelling out the number 6 over and over again like a haunting refrain. Then there was the story of Dr. Mendel, a psychologist in the 80s who insisted on interviewing the inmate. She was convinced it was some elaborate cover-up. After 3 sessions, she went home, locked herself in her garage, turned on the car, and left the tape recorder running on the passenger seat. When they recovered the tape, it was filled not with her voice, but with silence, punctuated by the faintest sound of breathing, steady, calm, and inhumanly patient. Can you imagine how chilling that must have been? The prison chaplain, trying to do a good deed, once brought him communion. He whispered prayers through the bars, but the wafer turned black in his fingers, and the wine morphed into a thick sludge that smelled like iron. The chaplain walked out looking pale as milk, resigning that very night. He didn't say much, just pressed a crucifix into the warden's hand and muttered, "He doesn't belong to us. He never belonged to us." And yet, there he remained, the nameless man in cell 6, untouched by time. His hair never grew, his face never aged, and his clothes never wore thin. He was always watching, always waiting, almost as if he was the one guarding the guards, turning the cell into a perch rather than a cage. Prisoners feared him more than solitary confinement, more than death row. They claimed to hear him whispering through the vents at night, though the guards insisted he never opened his mouth. Those whispers came in voices the prisoners recognized: mothers, dead children, their own inner thoughts twisted and spoken back at them. But instead of comfort, they urged them to claw their own skin, break bones, press their heads against the stone until they split. It was a dark game of psychological torment, and when suicides happened, as they often did, the bodies were always found with their eyes wide open, staring toward cell 6. Their faces weren't frozen in terror, but in recognition, as if they had seen something they had been waiting for all their lives. Imagine being in that prison, feeling the weight of that silence, the dread of that cell. The stories would seep into your bones, wouldn't they? It's like every guard and prisoner was part of this twisted tale, each one contributing to the legend of Cell 6. It wasn't just a place. It was a presence, an entity that lingered in the shadows, waiting for its moment. And isn't that what makes it so haunting? The idea that some things are better left untouched, that some stories are too dark to tell. But there it was, lurking in the corners of Graydon Penitentiary, a reminder that not all prisons hold just bodies. Some hold secrets that can shake the very foundations of reality. What do you think? What would you feel if you stood in front of that cell? Would you dare to look inside? Once, during a blackout, the security system failed for exactly 6 minutes, and when the lights came back on, the guards rushed to check the block, expecting riot, expecting escape, but every prisoner was in their bed. Every cell locked except for 6, where the man stood pressed against the bars, closer than he had ever been, his eyes meeting theirs, black as oil, his mouth stretching into the suggestion of a smile. A smile that made their teeth ache and their stomachs clench as if they had swallowed glass. And though he never spoke, the sound of 1,000 voices filled the corridor, at once overlapping, pleading, cursing. Laughing, all spilling from that open mouth, until one guard screamed and shot at him point blank, the bullet tearing through, nothing hitting the back wall, leaving the man untouched, his smile unbroken. The warden decided to transfer the guard, thinking it would solve the problem. But just 3 nights later, that same guard was discovered hanging in his kitchen, his feet barely brushing the floor. What was even creepier? His lips were sewn shut with thread, and next to him, scrawled on the wall in his own handwriting, were the chilling words, "6 is open. After that, you can bet no one dared to provoke him again." It was a haunting reminder of what could happen. In 2019, when the prison finally shut down for good, the state sent in crews to relocate the last inmates. But when they reached Cell 6, things took a strange turn. They found the door rusted solid, like it hadn't been touched in ages. No key could match the lock, and there was no record of the inmate on any list. The men sent to cut it open reported feeling faint. Some even vomited, while others experienced a ringing in their ears so sharp it actually drew blood. Can you imagine that? When they finally broke through, the cell was empty, the chains snapped like twigs, and the cot had rotted away to dust. But here's the eerie part. Etched into the stone from floor to ceiling were 6 digits. 6666666, burned into the wall as if with acid. Creepy, right? Now, Graydon Penitentiary stands abandoned, its windows boarded up, and its halls gathering mold, creating this eerie atmosphere thick with secrets. But the locals, they love to share tales that Cell 6 never really stayed empty. If you lean in close and press your ear against those creaky boards, they say you can hear breathing from inside, steady, calm, and patient, like it's waiting for something. It's kind of chilling, right? And get this, sometimes when the night is perfectly quiet and the wind dies down, you might even catch the faint scrape of chains moving across stone, slow and deliberate. It's like the man with no name is still pacing, still listening, still watching, just biding his time for that day when the door will finally swing open again. Can you imagine the stories he could tell? What do you think he's waiting for? Can you imagine that moment? The thrill, the fear? It's like he's been biding his time, just waiting for the right chance to step into the world again. Isn't that haunting? Picture it. The doors swing open, and he bursts out, free at last. What kind of chaos or joy do you think will unfold? It's wild to think about, right? What do you think will happen then?